Do you want to take a trip this summer redeeming your credit card points without having to open up 20 new credit cards? I know that there is a lot of people who want to take trips redeeming their credit card points to cool places that they've seen other people travel to, whether it be domestically here going over to Hawaii or to faraway lands that you may have not even known even existed until you saw someone post about it on Instagram last week. You probably don't have a huge travel budget, but you'd love to go to some of these places without having to break the bank. And you want to know if that is possible. Well, with credit card points, it is possible, but usually what you'll see people post online of how to be able to do that is that you're gonna need to open up 20 new credit cards. I know that right away, as soon as people start to hear they need to open up many new credit cards, they immediately disconnect from the rest of the information. I understand you not wanting to open up 20 new credit cards because some stranger online tells you that it's okay. While signing up for new credit cards is the fastest way to accumulate a lot of points, it also takes organization and discipline skills, and a lot of people just don't want to put in all of that effort. You can take an awesome trip this summer without doing this, and you don't need to have a million points or 20 credit cards to make it happen. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can redeem your points to take a cool trip this summer just from being an average spender and not needing to open up many new credit cards. So first, the way you're going to be able to take one of these trips this summer is going to be from having points. So if you're using your debit card, well, you should stop doing that because most debit cards aren't going to be earning any type of points. And when I say points, I don't mean a card that just happens to say that it's earning points. You need a card that's going to be earning transferable currencies. Because there's many different cards out there that tell you that they're earning points, but the points that they're earning is just essentially cash back and can't be redeemed for anything other than that. I've met a lot of people who have cards that are marketed as travel cards, but these cards don't earn transferable currencies, so there's no way to get outsized value for the points that you are earning with those cards. So if you have a Bank of America card or one of these other cards that claims to be a travel card but isn't really a transferable currency, then you are going to need to get yourself a new card that does earn transferable currencies. And these are going to be with the major banks, Chase, American Express, Capital One, and Citi. These banks have the most popular cards and also have the most useful points to be able to take these trips. Now this video is about not opening up a bunch of cards, but if you don't happen to have one of these cards that is earning transferable currencies, then you can't even begin to be able to take one of these cool trips. So if you don't happen to have one of these cards and you are looking to get one so you can take one of these cool trips, check out my links in the description box down below. Using one of my links really helps out the channel, and I'm incredibly thankful for anyone's support. Now, if you happen to have one of the cards from the major banks that I named, then you may already be earning transferable currencies, even if the card technically can't transfer to one of the transfer partners yet. So if you happen to have a card such as like the Chase Freedom Unlimited or the Chase Freedom Flex card, both of these cards are earning Chase UR points. However, they can't transfer over to the transfer partners connected with Chase until you happen to get one of the Chase's travel cards. And the travel cards would be one of the Sapphire cards, whether it either be the Chase Sapphire Reserved or the Chase Sapphire Preferred. Now, both of these cards have an annual fee, but taking advantage of the transfer partners that are connected to these cards can outweigh the annual fee. And if you already happen to have the Chase Freedom Unlimited card or the Chase Freedom Flex card, then you can just product change that card to being the Chase Sapphire Preferred card. So you won't even need to sign up for a new card. While I would recommend it because you can get yourself a welcome offer by doing so, but if you're someone who is against wanting to sign up for new cards, then you could just product change it and have your points convert to now being transferable currencies. And it isn't just with Chase where you can product change your card to being a transferable currency card. So if you happen to have a Capital One card, like the Quicksilver card, you may be able to product change that card to either being a Venture One card, a regular Venture card, or a Venture X card that all have the ability to transfer out to Capital One's transfer partners. And with Citi, you could do the same thing with something like the Citi Double Cash card, where you could product change that card into being a Citi Strata Premier card that allows you to transfer out to Citi's transfer partners. With American Express, you either have a card that's earning points or you don't. You can't product change the card to being a points earning card if it ends up only being a cashback card. So if you happen to have a card like the American Express Green, Gold, or Platinum card, all of these cards are going to have the ability to transfer out to their partners because they'll all earn American Express's membership reward points, which is a transferable currency. Now, out of all these transferable currencies, Chase is going to be the easiest one to navigate. And one of the great things about Chase is that they're one of the few programs that has a transfer partner that is a hotel program that actually makes sense to transfer over your transferable currencies to. And this is going to be the World of Hyatt. Many of the examples that I'm going to give are going to be with redeeming Chase points, because not only are they one of the most common cards that I see that people have, but they also can get you really good value very easily. I'm not saying that Chase is the best. You can earn a lot more points with something like American Express, but Chase is just a lot easier to navigate. Now, everyone has a different points balance, but I would say that for the average person that I speak with, usually people are ranging between 100,000 points that they have saved up or near like 500,000 points they have saved up. Now, obviously, there are people who have millions of points saved up, who are business owners, who I've spoken with, but I'm talking about the average person who probably just has one credit card that they've been using, hit the welcome offer, and they haven't redeemed any points with this card for maybe 2 to 3 years. Now, while it's nice to have 500,000 points, if you are a single 23-year-old who only has 75,000 points, don't feel bad about that. If you have a low amount of points but you are a solo traveler, then you're probably not in a bad position because it is a lot easier to find one available seat worth redeeming points than it is to find 2 available seats redeeming points. And if you were 2 people, while it is harder finding seats, you can earn points faster. And also, if you were staying in a hotel, you don't need to pay double the amount of points for 2 people occupying that room. So there's positive and negatives for everybody. So how are you gonna turn that one card you have and the current amount of points you have into an awesome trip this summer? Well, it does come down to how many points you do have, but I'm gonna give you a few examples of how you can redeem your points for an awesome trip this summer. Now, to get the best deals, you have to take advantage of where the deals are. I know this might sound simple enough, but you'd be surprised at how many people are thinking, you know what, I would love to go to Japan for cherry blossom season this year, even though the demand is incredibly high and it's gonna be extremely challenging to find any type of award availability that makes it worth your while. So to take advantage of your points, you need to go where the deals are and enjoy that trip. An example would be, say you happen to live in rural America and you want to travel to a major city sometime this summer. If you have under 100,000 Chase points, you could go to New York, but your points would go a lot farther if you travel to a city like New Orleans. There is a Hyatt Regency in New Orleans that goes for 12,000 points a night, and it's not very far away from Bourbon Street. So if you have right around 100,000 points, you could easily book this property and stay there for 5 nights, and also book the flights just through the travel portal, and it should be able to cover your entire trip. Hyatt is a 1-to-1 transfer partner with Chase, so staying at this property for 5 nights will cost you 60,000 points. So whether if you want to go in the middle of the summer, or if you want to go near the end of the summer and maybe stay for 5 nights during the first week of football season, well, you could do that as well. And staying at this property for the first week of football season would cost close to $1,300. So you'd be easily getting 2 cents per point with your points. So if you want to travel to a major city that's going to be a lot of fun, and you have Chase Ultimate Reward points, but you don't have a ton, check out New Orleans because I think that ends up being a great place to redeem your points. Next, we're going to look at traveling outside of the country. Now, for most Americans, the first international trip we have either ends up being to Canada or Mexico. Now, I have no problem with Canada, but Mexico's a lot more fun. The weather is nicer, it is cheaper, and the food is way better. Now, if you happen to have Chase points and you want to leave the country, but you don't have a ton of Chase points, check out Mexico City. There's a couple different Hyatt Regencies in Mexico City, and one of them is moving down to a Category 2 property. What this means is that it would only cost 8,000 points per night to stay at this hotel. Mexico City is a lot of fun, and with this property only costing 8,000 points per night, even if you don't have a ton of Chase Ultimate Reward points, you could probably stay at this property for at least a few days or up to a week just because of how low of cost it is when it comes to points. So if you want to go to a major city but leave the country, check out Mexico City. And when it comes to availability, both of these properties have most of their days available when you are going to be trying to redeem your Chase Ultimate Reward points. So any of the time you'd want to go during the summer, I bet you'd be able to find award availability for those dates you are looking to go. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, JP, I would love to take an international trip, but I don't have any Chase Ultimate Reward points, so how can I use my American Express membership reward points, Citi Thank You points, or Capital One Venture Miles to take an international trip to, say, Europe this summer? Well, you can do that without having Chase Ultimate Reward points. It just becomes a little bit more challenging when it comes to staying at hotels. But if you're just looking for flights to get over to Europe this summer, I can give you a few different award options that you could take advantage of. Now, there are a ton of different airport options to fly international in the US, so I'm just going to choose the most popular one on the East Coast of the country. And this is going to be JFK Airport. If you want to go over to Europe from JFK, you could do that flying on Air France to fly over to Paris, starting off in economy for a round trip, 37,500 points. And if you want specific dates to be able to book this, check out flying on June 17th from JFK Airport to CDG, which is Paris's airport, and then you would fly back on June 27th from CDG back over to JFK Airport. So if you are a solo traveler who either lives in New York or doesn't mind repositioning to New York, you could fly over to Paris on these exact dates for only 37,500 points. And Flying Blue, which is the program that is connected to Air France, is a transfer partner of all 4 of these major banks. Now, are there cheaper deals to get over to Europe? Sure. But if we're talking about going this summer to a high sought out destination like Paris, this ends up being, I think, a reasonable price and deal to take advantage of. And when it comes to earning 37,500 points, pretty much everyone who has a card that earns transferable currencies has that amount of points if they didn't just happen to redeem all of their points real recently. because if you just happen to even just sign up for the card, you're probably going to get at least a $200 or 20,000 point sign up bonus. So you're already more than halfway there when it comes to the required amount of points to be able to take this trip. And if you want to do this trip with another person, there are 2 seats available for the dates that I named. So you could do this trip and it would just end up costing twice the amount of points that you need to transfer over to your Flying Blue account. Now, if you are someone who happens to have a little bit more points and you want to go over to Europe, but you're dreading the thought of doing an economy flight all the way over to Europe and back because maybe you're a larger person or a taller person, well, there are options also if you want to do business class this summer to fly over to Europe. So we'll look again flying out of New York, only this time you'd be flying in business class, except you'd be flying over to Brussels, and the date would end up being on August 5th. You'd have 2 weeks to be able to explore Europe, and then on August 22nd, you'd be flying out of Geneva, Switzerland in business class on Swiss Air back to New York. To book this round trip in business class to and from Europe would cost 120,000 airplane miles. Now this doesn't include the hotel stays, but if you happen to have Chase Ultimate Reward Points, American Express Membership Reward Points, or Capital One Venture Miles, all of those points currencies transfer over to Aeroplan. And I know that this is the part where a lot of beginners get really confused because they hear me say, okay, wait a minute, so I'm grabbing onto my Capital One Venture Miles to transfer over to my Aeroplan account, but then you said I was flying on Brussels Airlines and Swiss Air. How does that make any sense? All you need to know is Aeroplan is partnered with many different airlines, and through their partnerships, when these other airlines decide to open up award availability to other partners, if you happen to have Aeroplan miles, you can redeem those miles to be able to book these partner airlines flights. And since Chase, American Express, and Capital One are transfer partners to Aeroplan, then as long as you have their points currencies, you can transfer over to your Aeroplan account to be able to book these business class international seats. And if you are a couple and you want to book a trip to Europe this summer and you have 240,000 points, well, there were 2 seats available last time I checked, so go ahead and book this trip. Now, if you're curious of how I found award availability, go to Points Travel 101 to purchase my course. I go over the ins and outs of being a points and miles booking expert and help you become one as well. But if you don't want to become a points and miles booking expert and you still want to take this trip, well, just check out the dates that I said. Fly out on August 5th from JFK over to Brussels, which ended up being BRU as the airport code. And you would fly back to JFK on August 22nd from Geneva, Switzerland, which has the airport code GVA. So if you want a trip to Europe this summer in style, well, I just planned one out for you, and it really won't take that many points to be able to do. Now, some of you may wonder, well, how about Asia? Well, there still is availability to go to Asia this summer. However, Asia can be a little bit trickier when it comes to finding award availability, at least for a good deal. Now, if you're okay with flying in economy, one of the deals that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think is a decent deal if you want to go over to Asia, ends up being flying with Cathay Pacific in economy from Los Angeles over to Hong Kong. You can do this round trip for 54,000 Asia miles. Now, I know that some people may hear that and think, well, that's not that great of a deal, especially when you compare it to a round trip flying in economy over to Europe, but you have to remember that flying from Los Angeles over to Hong Kong is a decent amount farther than flying from, say, JFK over to Paris. And also, when it comes to the Asian carriers, they're just better than the European airlines. And if you look at what the cents per point would end up being if you wanted to fly round trip in economy from Los Angeles over to Hong Kong during July, it ended up being somewhere along the lines of like $1,200 round trip. So for 54,000 points, you're getting close to 2 cents per point, and this is a pretty expensive economy flight. I mean, you can find economy flights round trip over to Europe for sometimes like $700, $800. So while the numbers on the surface may not seem as great, if you have under 60,000 points, you could fly round trip over to Hong Kong. And this is the time where you wouldn't want to have Chase Ultimate Rewards points to book this trip because Cathay Pacific is not a transfer partner of Chase, but they are a transfer partner of American Express, Capital One, and Citi. Now, say you've been saving up points for a few years and you want to travel in ultra style this summer. Well, if you happen to have over 200,000 points, then you can do a pretty awesome trip. Now, this itinerary is going to be a little bit different, and you're not going to be flying in and out of the same airports. So first, you would start off in Los Angeles and you would fly over to Hong Kong on either August 26th, 27th, or 28th with Cathay Pacific in first class. This seat will cost 125,000 points, which is a decent chunk of points, but you have to remember that this is international true first class. This isn't some domestic first class product where you're flying with American Airlines and the domestic seat may end up costing like $500 if you paid cash. This is a seat that if you were to pay cash, it'll go for close to about $10,000 for one way. And if you're thinking, well, first class is cool, but what am I gonna do in Hong Kong? Hong Kong is like Manhattan on steroids. They have almost twice the amount of skyscrapers as Manhattan does. This city is awesome. You can go live your Rush Hour 2 adventure. Now from Hong Kong, you have to make your way over to Singapore by September 8th. You could either stay in Hong Kong the entire time, or you could have some type of cool Crazy Rich Asian trip where you travel around to different Asian countries and then you end off in Singapore before September 8th. And if you're wondering, flights between many of the different Asian countries are actually pretty cheap. It's getting over the ocean that's really expensive. And from Singapore, you'll be flying on Singapore Airlines in their awesome business class to SFO for 107,000 KrisFlyer miles. Now to begin this trip, you flew out of LAX, but you returned to SFO. You could return to LAX, but it just will require more miles, and I think that going to SFO would make more sense to save the miles. And if you happen to be someone who is just repositioning on the west coast of the US, then it wouldn't matter if you are going to LAX or SFO anyways, because then you could just go over to your other airport after you end up landing in SFO. But in total, to do this awesome, ultra luxurious trip over to Asia this summer would cost you 232,000 points. And again, the dates that I found 2 seats available. So if you want to do this trip as a couple, it would just require twice the amount of points. But you both could fly in first class there and business class back for under 500,000 points. And just like with the trip that I said to get over to Europe, there are possibilities of getting cheaper flights over to Asia this summer. But if we're looking at what I was able to find today to get over to Asia, I think these end up being solid deals that someone should take advantage of. Now to book these flights, you could book it directly on the airline's website. You'd go to Cathay Pacific and put in either August 26th, 27th, or 28th, and then you would look to fly home on Singapore Airlines website on September 8th. I've heard some people say that they can't find any awards to be able to book this summer, and that's just not true. If you are someone who has 60,000, 120,000, or 240,000 points and you want to book an awesome trip this summer, these are some options for you. I want to see more people booking trips, whether it be to nearby states or faraway lands. You don't need to get 20 credit cards. If you just have your one credit card and you have been spending on it and accumulating points for a while, chances are you probably have enough points in your account to be able to take yourself an awesome adventure. But hopefully you enjoy this video. Let me know in the comment section down below, where are you going this summer with redeeming your points? And also, how many points is it going to be costing you to take that trip that you're taking this summer? Now, if you happen to have any questions about any of these trips, drop it down in the comment section down below. I'll do the best I can to answer it. And if you're interested in getting any cards, check out my links in the description box down below. If you do decide to use any of my links, it does really help out the channel. I'll be incredibly thankful for your support. If you happen to really like this video, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and have a beautiful rest of your day.